It's Nick's Halloween Spooktacular!
She should have died hereafter. There would have been a time for such a word. Tomorrow. And tomorrow. And tomorrow. Creeps in this petty pace from day to the last syllable of recorded time. And all our yesterdays have lighted fools the way to dusty death. Out, out, brief candle. Life is but a walking shadow. A poor player that struts and frets his hour up on the stage. And then is heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing.
Ah, Macbeth, the classic tale of a man's ruthless and bloody rise to power. Last year I reviewed Titus Andronicus, one of Shakespeare's other plays to feature such a character who does nothing but murder his way to the top. Of course, that play is shunned by the pretentious society and considered too vile for their delicate ears. No, instead they opt for this one of the bard's true epics penned at the height of his form. The story concerns a Scottish general, Macbeth, who is seduced into rising to power by a trio of witches one night. They foretell that his superior will be killed and he will be put on the throne. His wife latches on to this idea and orders him to kill his commanding officer and continues to spur him on, killing everyone he knows, including his best friend, until finally he himself is killed in turn.
You can also imagine maybe John Wayne is Macbeth going, well, is this a dagger I see before me?
A tapestry of blood woven by the fates. Of course, as ruthless as the evil King Macbeth is, it's really his wife who's the villain, or at least as big a villain as he is. And I know it's anti-feminist to say that she's the villain because that's blaming women for men's issues, and no woman ever did anything bad ever. But we're still going to look at this bigotry. Of course, it is implied that Macbeth had aspirations for power and she just goaded him on, but really it was mostly her doing. It's the old idea of a man owes all his success to his wife, a strong, caring woman who managed to get him out of the house. I think this says it best.
Saying, behind every successful man there's a woman, a loving, giving, caring woman. But you wouldn't know about that, Dan, because there's no old saying about what's behind a miserable failure.
Jane, you ignorant slut.
It also conjures up scenes from film noir where women are evil and seductive, forcing men to do bad things for them. Hell, it comes right out of a film called Double Indemnity, with the femme fatale convinces her lover to kill her husband for the insurance money. I mean, you could make the argument that Lady Macbeth was the original femme fatale, and all of noir owes its very existence to Shakespeare. Bastard invented another genre. And of course, being the villain, she is the most tragic end.
She's
Out. Damn spot out, I say.
She dips into the world of madness from which she can never recover. This shows the dual tragedy between them, how Macbeth suffers for following his wife, and how the lady suffers for dreaming beyond her position. Remember, this was written back in the times of kings and divine right. You couldn't move up in society, you were only allowed to live in the niche God had carved out for you. In fact, a popular interpretation of the play says it's little more than a propaganda piece flattering James I, the then King of England. He was formerly the King of Scotland, and while he wasn't exactly a conqueror, it helped solidify his position by making him seem to be one. Don't forget, England was still feeling the problems after years of war and a line of bad leaders. I say they have dual tragedy because where Lady Macbeth defeats herself, Macbeth is defeated by his own faith. Or better yet, a linguistic loophole. I don't mean to spoil anything, but he's prophesied to, "No man that's born of woman shall ever have power upon thee." Sure enough, at the end of the play, he fights Macduff, who was from his mother's womb untimely ripped. I hate this stupid cliche. The whole thing is predicated on a pun. I mean, how's that for the fate of the world? It all hangs on a loose interpretation of a vague prophecy.
Fool! No man can kill me.
I am no man.
Why are these prophecies always so damn vague? Like, why can't someone just tell the whole plot for once? I mean, I guess they have, but, well, like Oedipus got it right? They don't really bullshit the prophecy in that one. I mean, it's pretty clear. The whole point of that play is trying to outrun your own destiny, dark as it may be. And I think this play has some of the same theme. Macbeth doesn't necessarily choose to do all these things. It's prophesized and almost set in stone. He has no free will. He's just a puppet, guided along by the fates. And in a practical sense, he is a puppet. Macbeth is just a fictional character, forced by Shakespeare's hand to commit these atrocities. He gets no say-so in it. He's just a shade, brought to life by actor after actor upon the lighted stage. And that's something terrifying. That your entire life, everything you've known, loved, and feared, and all the sufferings that have beset you time and again, are nothing more than a play used to entertain the masses. A play that has resounded through time. Of course, it survived from the 1600s into the modern day and has had numerous stage and film adaptations. There's a gangster movie from the 50s called Joe Macbeth, which is moderately okay. It really calls to mind how the gangster movies of today are actually inspired by many works of Shakespeare, like Richard III, and even Romeo and Juliet was reinterpreted for Gangland America.
Jets! Hey, Jets! Let's jump him!
Yeah. Anyway, there was also the Roman Polanski version, which had that high-budget, spooky feel to it, and was drenched in buckets of blood. Don't worry, it was made before he raped that girl, so it's cool. He gained a lot of controversy for actually showing the murders, which in the play were left more to suggestion. This was after his wife was killed by the Manson family, so he was feeling in a particularly violent mood. He had this to say: I wanted to show Macbeth's violence the way it is, because if you don't show it realistically, then it's immoral and that's harmful. Of course, he could have said that to defer the fact that it's simple sensationalism. I think it's more haunting when you only suggest something, letting the audience's imagination do the work for you. Of course, my favorite take on the Macbeth tale comes from Akira Kurosawa. Yeah, you know I would go with the Japanese. Titled Spiderweb Castle and retitled Throne of Blood, it sets the action back in the samurai days of Japan, with Kurosawa's leading man, Toshiro Mifune, in the lead role. I think this is Mifune's best work as an actor. Look at that frame and that armor. Mifune just has that commanding presence whereby he takes charge and doesn't let go. That's not to speak ill of the other actors, oh no. They all do a fine job bringing the bard to life on the other side of the world. I also like Lady Macbeth, or whatever her name is in the play, how she simply stares in some scenes. It's fascinating to me how Kurosawa took a Western story like this and translated it to Eastern philosophy, replacing the three witches with a Buddhist monster, and taking the play from the foggy Scottish moors and setting it on the foggy base of Mount Fuji. And he makes good use of it. He did this a lot, taking things like Greek mythology and making samurai movies out of it. I once wrote a whole thing about how the Seven Samurai is a reinterpretation of the Iliad. But what really gets me is how similar he kept it, with a ruthless rise that parallels many of the shogun lords of Japanese history. Kurosawa would revisit these themes again in his film Ran, which was his take on Shakespeare's King Lear. It had some truly haunting imagery, but I wouldn't consider it true horror. It really shows how universal someone like Shakespeare is, how he tapped into that fundamental essence of human nature that has been repeated and repeated again all throughout human history. All the world's a stage and we but merely players. But that's something even more terrifying. that this is what our leaders truly are. Not idealistic heroes who have set out to right the wrongs in society, but killers, cold and deliberate, taking power over us with oceans of blood dripping from their hands. This doesn't go back to Shakespeare. He ripped it off from Machiavelli, who only wrote it down by studying history and the horrors that men wreak. Caesar, Alexander, Ramses, and on back until the first caveman saw another on the throne and desired it for himself. And it's not going to stop anytime soon.